Welcome to Navigate STL Schools, a podcast. My name is Anastasia, and I am the Executive Director of Navigate STL Schools. Today, we are sitting down with Ohun Ashe. Ohun, how are you?
I am good. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
And we are so excited to speak to you. You are a local activist doing lots in the city of St. Louis. But before we get into that, talk to us specifically about your K-12 education story. So, like, where'd you go to school? How did you like it? All of that.
So I am a public school baby. I went to school in North County at Jennings from like kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. I wasn't that much of a scholar at the time, but my mom was a teacher, so I at least had to do okay. But I love Jennings. I think it is a very special place, and I still attribute all of the success to the education I got at Jennings.
Awesome. So tell us about the work that you do and what inspires you.
So during the day, I am a multimedia developer, which is just a fancy way of saying I create training videos. It sounds cool though. But my passion and my life work is activism, organizing, advocacy for social justice, specifically Black communities, and empowering us to receive more.
So again, you talk about this passion of activism. We know that in 2015, a spotlight was nationally put on St. Louis with the killing of Mike Brown and all of the things that happened after that with the Black Lives Matter movement. How do you think those things have affected the city of St. Louis in general, but more particularly how they're advocating for themselves in terms of education and the education system?
So I think August 9th, 2014 froze a lot of people. I don't think we've seen anything like that in our communities. So it made us look upon ourselves and what was really going on. But specifically for students, I think for our youth, that was a time where, because I remember being in high school and I cared about sports, high school drama, boyfriends, girlfriends, friends, all of those things. But I think that it opened them up to a different reality. And in 2014 in St. Louis, we saw them protesting, using their voices to say what they cared about. And we've seen that continue since. We've seen students, when they feel like they aren't receiving what they're supposed to be from their schools, getting the education that they want and deserve, they're advocating for themselves, which has then put more responsibility on schools to do the right thing. And I think that that is beautiful, that students are aware and have a different reality than we had back in the day, and they are using their voice in protest to stand up for themselves and what they deserve.
So you mentioned a lot about like your initial interest in activism for communities of color, specifically Black communities in St. Louis. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in the beginning, it started over police brutality, and what I saw and what happened with Michael Brown. I grew up in Jennings, like I stated before. Ferguson is literally right next door. So the streets that they were protesting on, the buildings and the looting were all of the things that I used every single day. So initially when I went out there, I was more upset with the community and feeling like we were destroying our own community than I was with the killing of Mike Brown. And it took me coming out there. I went out with my sorority. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta, and that is where I got my eye opener, where I saw the response that the police was giving to the community. And I started coming out more and more. And a few days later, I got arrested for the first time in my life, and I felt less than human. So the first issue that I knew that we had a problem was with policing, police brutality, over-policing, criminalization. But shortly afterwards is where I realized that the problem didn't just last there. We have a problem with housing. We have a problem with education, healthcare, and all of those things that also deserve protest and organizing around.
Yeah, you talk about over policing, right? So a lot of the conversation that's being had currently in education spaces around like this police advocacy is that the same police that are killing Black students are the same police that are working in school systems. Missouri incarcerates the highest number of Black people per capita in the world. And those incarceration rates for Black men particularly align very closely with the suspension rate for African American students in St. Louis public schools. My question to you, kind of given all of that, is what do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing students when it comes to being educated in a place that has such a rich history when it comes to education and race relations?
I think one of the biggest things that is the underlying issue to all is poverty. 40% of students, and of course that means majority Black students, are born into poverty. And I think around 25 to 30% stay in that throughout their entire K through 12, which means they don't have access to the resources, the tools, materials they need to be a scholar student. And if you are struggling with where you're going to live that night, where you laying your head, how you're going to eat, if you are the oldest and you have to take care of the other kids while your mom and dad is at work, why would I care about homework? Why would I care about school? I'm just trying to survive. And we know that hand in hand with that are usually schools that are under-resourced, which means that the teachers can't give what they need to give, where there are police in the buildings. Instead of resourcing schools with what they need, we get the least and the less, meaning that we are setting students up for that school to prison pipeline for simply being poor. And that's weaponizing and oppressing a certain people instead of over investing and helping.
So yeah, that's a lot. I guess my question is kind of given that, plain and simple, poverty is the root cause of all of it, and poverty is a very systemic issue. What is something that you've recently encountered in the work that you've done that has really gotten you riled up around this issue and that you think can inspire like a community or a generation under you to want to push forward?
So one of the alarming numbers that I've recently heard is that to fund one police officer, that is about $190,000 a year, which is the salary of about 4 to 5 teachers combined, which means that just plain statistics, St. Louis is more involved in investing in policing than it is schooling and education. And once again, that means that we are setting our kids up for failure. We're more into criminalizing them than we are with getting them the resources that they need to be successful. And that angers me because it's 2021. We know better. We should be doing better, and we should be implementing everything that we can, meaning taking the resources from public safety, which is just policing, who has the highest budget and all of it. I think they have like over 30% of the budget, and giving it to the communities that need it instead.
I was actually on a community meeting a couple weeks ago with the police chief for the city of St. Louis, and they're actually reducing the requirements to become a police officer in the city because they said they can't get anybody to apply for the job. And I think that is such an interesting thing. And I asked the question of, what are they doing in terms of community policing and recruiting inside of the communities the most to help them kind of secure themselves and have better trust relationships? Because I think that's going to lead to more lawsuits. And he didn't really have an answer for that. And so that kind of leads me into my next question. Like, how do you hope that the activism and the advocacy that you are currently doing is going to have an impact on future policy, future generations, and just these big outcomes that we all want to see to have a bigger and better St. Louis?
I think the dream of most activists and advocacy workers and organizers, no matter where you are in social justice, is a cultural change. We want to see something completely different than what we are seeing today. We want to see policy, legislation. We want to see laws that are better for everyone, and especially empowering Black and brown communities. So for me, my biggest dream is that one day we have future generations that can't even connect to the realities that we are living in today. So systemic oppression in any form is just something that they can't really even fathom because of all of the work that we've done today to shift the culture that we're living in. And I mean, that's one of my biggest dreams. And I really do think that it can come true if we just continue to push.
So, what do you think are some of those opposing forces that could potentially be kind of fighting against what you're fighting for when it comes to change here?
I tell people all of the time that the system isn't this way by happenstance. It just didn't come about. It's people that literally benefit from the way things are today. And if you are benefiting from something, why would you want it to change? And what hurts the most is that if you're benefiting from it, it usually means you're in charge or in control of it. So when we say we are fighting systems, we are fighting real people and things and processes and legislation that oppresses people, and the people in power want to keep it that way because they're benefiting from it. Why change anything? And I think that's one of the hardest things, is that you're not only having to change a person, you have to change systems, you have to change laws, legislation, policies. I mean, the culture of America, of St. Louis, we're going up against all of those things.
So, what gives you hope when you think about the future of education in St. Louis or the future of the city in general?
I think it is the wins that we've had so far. If you look at St. Louis today, the lawmakers look like me. It's Black women. We have older people. We have the St. Louis Board of Education filled with people that are what I call people-focused leaders. It's not self-focused. They're not politicians. They're not trying to do this for self. They are actually for the people and the betterment of people. And they're already doing things to create change. We have a mayor that's already worked to empty the workhouse, that has worked to not fulfill open vacancies in policing, and giving that money to communities, and then also asking community input. I think that says and shows a lot. So that really does give me hope. And then organizations, people that are trailblazing and just taking their own time and effort to do things to make change in St. Louis. And if we look at where we are today versus where we were in 2014, I think you will see a huge step forward.
So, what do you think is one small change that we could make today that would make the biggest difference for families in the city right now?
I think giving families access to technology, to Wi-Fi. We are living in a world where it's technology first, and we are only going to move more into that. So we cannot gatekeep what people need to be successful, whether it's in your life or work, if it's as a student. When we just saw with the pandemic, when students had to move to work, from home, a lot of them didn't have access to those things and the tools. So we are literally keeping people behind by gatekeeping technology. And if we are saying this is the way forward, that's automatic that people should have access to it. And I think that one small change will open a lot more doors for our families, our babies, our workers, and so much more.
All right. So as you're talking about this idea of, I want to call it just this tech justice, or being able to have that introduction in that space, what do you think that parents should consider when they're choosing a school for their child?
I think they should consider their child. I think every person has their own unique set of skills, talents, things they are interested in. So if you are a parent that has the privilege to think about schooling and options for schooling for their child, then considering what school best aligns with their child to give them the best advantage and step forward.
All right. And my last question, it kind of is going back. I think that all of the things from 2014 till now have caused people to start to think of St. Louis as this hyper political place, or kind of a dangerous or dangerous or bad place to live. What's something you want parents to consider when they're navigating the school system, or what you want them to understand about how the city has changed or grown if they're considering moving here or purchasing a home in the city or staying in the city when it comes to educating their child?
I think one of the biggest things is that we have resources. I know that with the stigma that comes with St. Louis, it's really negative, but when you really get down to the roots of it, I have a website for the culture STL.com. You can go on there right now, go to the education tab, and it gives you resources that can help your child. We have things like Navigate STL Schools that will help you find the best learning for your student. So I think that to inspire parents to go outside of what's just given, it's not easy access to these things, but if we look a little bit, we'll find that there are true resources and help for our students. So even if they aren't getting it in their school, that there are things that you can do outside that is willing to help for cheap, for free, provide rides, whatever you need. So we care about our people in this community, even if it doesn't seem like it, we really do.
That is so inspiring. We really do want parents to be able to make their own decisions and to feel like they are a part of the change, a part of the process, and a part of a community when it comes to being in this city. We are so excited for the work that you are doing and all of the initiatives that you're pushing for. And we're looking forward to seeing all of the things that you and the people that you work with are going to be able to do in the future. Thank you for talking with us today.
Of course. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for listening, and have a great afternoon.